Today's daf is daf pei beis, and we had in the Mishnah that if you mixed up blood from a chatas primi that had to be done on the inner mizbech and the chatas achitzen, we know that the blood of a korban chatas that's meant to be in the outside, if you brought it inside the Beis Hamikdash, it disqualifies the korban. But if you took the blood of a chata primi and just carried it outside, does not disqualify it. So we said that if you first sprinkled the outside, then you brought it in, you already completed the chatas chitzayna, and then what you sprinkle inside, part of it is chatas prima, no problem. But if you did the other way around, if you brought it inside, then you've disqualified the outside chatas. And then we had a machlekes Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim, whether this din applies to all korbanos, that if you brought the blood inside, it becomes puzzle, or is it only by a karma chata? Because the pasuk which discusses this disqualification is actually referring to karma chatas. So this is the closest thing we'll get to a piece of Aganata. Says the Gemara over here, 3 lines on top of the page, that pay beis today's daf. Rabbi Akiva said, so Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, why does Rabbi Akiva say it applies to all korbanos? Moshel Ma David Omer, what is it compared to? Le Talmud Shemozik Le Rabbi Bechamin. Let's say a Talmud was pouring over there hot water to his master, and then the master says to him, Mizagli, I want you to pour for me. Amalei Bameh, hot, cold, what would you like? Amalei Le Bechamin Onu Asukin. We're talking about hot water, and I'm asking you to pour some for me. L'cheda, what do I mean? Achshav. Now, since you asked, bein b'chamin, bein b'tzaymin. I don't really care. You can use hot or cold. So what's up to do with here? I'm saying here. Merdi, b'chatas askin, and the parsha is talking about chatas, and then it says again, and any chatas that you brought the blood inside, and so on and so forth. Why do you mention chatas? We're talking about a chatas. Why does he talk chatas? Elav chatas kaminala. I don't mean only chatas. Ela kol kachim. I mean all kachim, not just a chatas, because we're already talking about chatas. And if I'm telling you again chatas, interesting, you would think we're the other way around. But Kiva says, we'll see in a minute. That's the logic. Maskal that's logic. Mechdi. Israbu kol kochim legabim mizbeach. It also talks about in that very parsha another subject which applies not just to chatas, applies to all korbanos, and that is regarding merika v'shtifa. You have to rinse out every single keli there, make sure there's no noise and all that. Is chatas normally? So then why talk? Since we're talking about all korbanos, why is it chatas? Because he highlights chatas to tell you that this din about doma. Regarding the other din, it applies to all kabbanas, but this din about the heinle who it says that kol chatas sheyuva medom. If you brought the blood inside into the oil moil, the chat of a kedush is a problem. Applies only to chatas. No, Hakabakif says all kabbanas. So damya, if I want to compare it to, I'll compare it to the Talmud Shemazig LeRabbi. This is what it is. Bein b'cham. So we're talking about all kabbanas now, right? Because merika v'shtifa replies to all kabbanas. So you're pouring for your master any kind of drink, cold, hot. And then he says the word chatas. He says, give me only hot. So if I can't, your logic doesn't make sense. So what's Taka Rabbi Akiva's for? How does he not learn all kabbanas? At the time Rabbi Akiva mechatas v'chol chatas. It could have said just the word chatas. What does it say? It says kol chatas, any chat, all chatas, to tell you kol, any including other kabbanas as well. The Tanya, but the Braisa chatas, ainly chatas. All I know is a korban chatas that you bring the blood inside the base of Mikdash, it disqualifies the korban. Kochim minayin haino all kochim tamulemer kol chatas. Kochim kalim minayin. So maybe you'll say, okay, all korbanos that are comparable to a chatas, a korban asham, korban oila. You brought the blood inside, it disqualifies it. Hayra korban shlamim, korban trade, the same applies. Or b'chayr tamulemer says vichol chatas. There's an extra vav. Could have just said kol chatas. What's it? Vichol chatas. The extra vav is coming to expand it further. Even Kachim Kalin, you brought the blood inside, it's possible. Leave it Rabbi Akiva. Amal Rabbi basically argues. Yeah, I feel at the marble collar. You can stand on your head and you go the whole day long. Say, let's add. Any shemelach, I will listen to you. Elachatas. It says in the pasuk chatas. Chatas is chatas. It says I don't care if it says bakol. The fact is it says the word chatas. Why b'chal say chatas? We're talking about a chatas. The fact that it says chatas means it's limited on your chatas. Not other kabbanas. That's a chachamim. Other kabbanas, you brought the blood inside, doesn't disqualify the rest of the korban. No, so what do you do with the coal and the chol? Ella chatas, ainly ella. All I know is chatas yochid. The chatas of his individual How do you know? What about a carbon tzibur? All the examples of the kabbanas here are all kabbanas of an individual. How do I know chatas tzibur? Same thing. You brought the blood inside of a chatas. It's disqualified. Tamalema kol chatas. Kol comes to expand to. We're still talking about a chatas, but kol even tzibur. Ain't the chatas zoch? All I know is the chatas of a male. Chatas nekeva menayin. How you know the chatas female? Now you know which kind of carbon do you normally bring for chatas? Only a female. The only chatas that you bring, which is a male, is by a se'ir nasi. If a nasi made a mistake and ruled that it's mutter, his chatas is a male. So the Gemara is really going to ask, what do you mean ain't little chatas or anything all the way around? But anyway, all I know is one kind of chatas. How do we know to expand it also to the other gender? So that's where you have a kol and you have a veh. The kol is to include tzibur and the veh is to include the other gender. Which direction you're going? The vast majority of chatois are nekevas. So you should have said ein liel and nekeva. Zochem and nine, not all the way around. You're right. Ein liel chatz and nekeva. I tell you right. All I know is that nekeva chatz zochem and hein chatz zocher. Tamaleme v'chol chatz. Says the Gemara, are you telling me that Yesek Lili Haikra Lahachidi also? You tell me that Yesek Lili hold that this is where he learns out that a chatas, if you brought the blood inside, it's possible. But Tanya, this is possible where it says V'chol chatas asher yuva medom lo'emay lechaper lo'ita'achol. Right? So that's what we're learning right now is the mucker that you're not allowed to bring the blood inside. But L'chayr we're going to learn from elsewhere from the story of what happened after Nadav Avihu. In Pasha Shmini. Well, Tanya, that everything over there in the Pasha is talking about these podium that get burned and the She'im that get burned, that they're normally when you burn these podium, you burn them outside the Beis Hamikdash area. Here, you're going to burn them in the Beis Hamikdash area. You're going to a special area where you burn them. The lamay beloises and you will get a loises if you end up eating these podium that have to be burnt. Basically, if you're telling me that this whole parsha of Moshe and Aaron is talking about podium and Asrafim, and he's telling them where you burnt it, that you have to burn in the right place in the bida, not outside. So they asked him, where do you know that a chatas, that if you bring the blood inside, how do you know? Basically, that is possible. He said to them. Sorry, Rabbi learns that the pasuk of Cholchatas Yuv Medam Lo the main purpose of that pasuk is not to tell you if you bring the blood inside. That's what makes it possible. What makes it possible is we learn from another pasuk. But now that it became possible, what do you do with it? Part of the mitzvah is to burn it, not to eat it, and therefore, I'm telling you where to burn it inside the area of the Beis Hamikdash.
It's a very interesting expression, though. Beis Hamikdash.
Yeah,
but it's not frequent, though.
True, not bitter, but we have it sometimes. Yeah. So he says, ask us, so where do you know that you're not allowed to bring blood in? If you're using that pasuk that once you brought it in, which is possible, but that's not the purpose of that pasuk is to tell you where to bring it. So how do you know you're not allowed to bring the blood in? Amalem said, Hein Luhuva, Moshe Ben said to what? You didn't bring the blood in, so you didn't bring it in. So what's going on here? So that's how you know that it's us to bring in. So why does over here in this other brayso bring the pasuk of the Chol Chata Sheyuva Medama? When that's not where Rabbi Yisrael himself learns it from. He learns another pasuk. So the Gemara, you're right, but it's varav the Rabbi Kiva comment. He's telling Rabbi Kiva, even if she tascha that you learn from that pasuk, that's not because that your very pasuk says the word chatas is only limited to karma chatas, and the kol is coming to be married sibur and the cave and zachar, not coming to be nothing to do with other kachukal. But I personally don't even learn from that pasuk. Next Mishnah, okay, a korban chata shekibel dama b'shnei kaises. You mekabel a korban chatas with in blood in 2 cups. In 2 cups. So now there's 2 kinds of chatos, right? There's a chatas pnim and there's a chatas chitzon. The chatas pnim you have to do it inside the base, make you spray the blood, and then the shiraim you bring outside, and the chatas chutz you bring it outside in the first place. So if you put it in 2 cups, not the one mixers now, but you have 2 cups, no problem. Yotze echemen lechutz. You took one of the cups of mistake outside the base of English. So that blood now is yotze. It's possible. The other remaining cup is still kosher. Happening kosher. It's kosher. Doesn't disqualify the rest of the carbon. Aber nichnes echem lefrim. We just learned you're not allowed to take the blood. Yeah, no, nothing to do with tarubas here. 2 cups from 1 carbon. 1 cup got disqualified. Because the chutz, the other cup, remaining cup is good.
So the rest of it.
It doesn't. But if you brought it inside, remember, you're not allowed to bring. We just learned you're not allowed to bring the blood of the carbon into the heichel. If you did, it disqualifies the second cup as well. What do you call it? According to the Chacham. If one of the cups went inside, basically he says, what's the difference? As we'll soon see his logic. You can use the other cup, the one that didn't come inside. However, the Chacham is placed in. Once you brought one cup in, it disqualifies the rest of the carbon. I'll explain you my logic. If you have a machshava of pigel, and that is I'm going to be this machshava pigel of the wrong time or the wrong place. I have machshava pigel, I'll eat it, let's say, outside the base of Mikdash, or I'll spray the blood outside the base of Mikdash. Madach machshava pasul, so stringent, if you have in mind, and yet, and you all agree that if that cup went outside the cup that remained behind, is still kosher. So if you had in mind when you were shechting a carbon that's supposed to be on the outside mizbech, you had in mind, I'm going to spray the blood in the inside mizbech. It doesn't passel it. There's no pigel. If the pigel is only if you had in mind to do it outside the base of Mikdash, not if you had in mind to do it inside in a place where it shouldn't be, but that doesn't passel it. We'll see more later how we know. Is Einadin surely? So which is stricter? Obviously the outside, because the machshava passels, and yet you tell me remaining cup is kosher. So surely if you're in the inside where machshava doesn't passel, you brought the one cup in, the remaining cup should be kosher. Okay, and what the Gemara will discuss barichas this kavuchemer. Then the Mishnah continues. If your intention was to spray the blood inside, it already disqualifies the blood, that blood in that cup. But if you brought it in stam, it doesn't disqualify the blood in the cup that you're holding in your hand. It's only if if you had in mind, because in that passage where it says it says so if that was your intention, okay. But if you did not have intention to chapper, even though you walked in b'mezid with a cup of blood into the base of Mikdash, doesn't passel it. That's opinion number one. Rab Shimon said, no. Achi chapper, you actually have to spray the blood before we say that it becomes passel. No, if you brought the cup in, even if you had intention to spray, it doesn't passel it. And Rab Yehuda says, im hechnis shoygig, if you're machnis b'shoygig, that's when kosher. If you did it b'shoygig, it's kosher. If you did it b'mezid, even though you had no intention of mechapper, we'll see more later. The more we'll discuss is it's a problem. Then it says here, call adam any pasal adam disqualified for whatever reason. Let's say he took it out of the base of Mikdash, you put him as back. Here it's tzitz can't help you. Ella tummy. The only thing that tzitz is there, the sole purpose of tzitz is that the blood became tummy, and you put it on his back. The tzitz will be maratza. So tzitz maratza tummy, maratza ala yotze. Only with tummy. Now the Gemara will explain the kavuchem of Yossi and how the chum deal with that. And we're going to go back and forth here. So interesting. It's all logic. Tanya, we learned. But basically said about that if you bring the blood inside, it does not disqualify the second cup with the kavuchem. Repeat the kavuchem. Outside is so stringent that you just thought you're gonna bring it outside. And yet, if you took one cup out, the cup remaining inside is kosher. If you had a mind to bring the blood inside, which is the wrong place, and that's not called pigel. So sure, if you brought it inside, it shouldn't pass the other blood. On Malay, so the Gemara is going to answer back. The Chacham will argue each item here we're going to have a pasuk for. They say to him, it says a pasuk, Asher yuva middama. You brought from his blood. From his blood means even if you brought mixas dama, it passes the rest. Rabbi Yossi Aglu is not perturbed by that, because remember, Rabbi Yossi learns it from another pasuk. He learns from the pasuk, Hein lohuva es dama el amigdash. Rabbi Moshe says to Aaron and his children, you didn't bring the blood, and there it doesn't say middama, it says es dama. The entire blood. Now, he learns when there's a big difference in which parts you learn from. According to when does the dam plaster the whole carbon only as dama? You brought the whole blood inside. But Rabbi Akiva learns from the first pasuk where it says the mid dam from its blood, and therefore Rabbi Akiva holds one cup, passes the rest. Right, this is the pasuk. Okay, so now let's go to the reverse. And based on what you just said right now, not that the pasuk establishes that if one cup is brought in, it passes the other cup. I should now use a kavuchayim to say that if you took it outside, surely it should pass the second cup. Why do you say the second cup is kosher? According to you, that this is the pasuk. Why is that? Because very simple. Which is stricter? We'll always take the premise that the stricter taking outside than bring it in, because the machshava pigul only applies outside, doesn't apply to pnim. So he said, let's go faket. But machshava doesn't pass inside. Yet poisel down shebefnim eshebechutz. Yet bringing the cup in disqualifies the inner cup. The second cup is mokesh machshava poisel bechutz. If you had a machshava thing outside, which passes the carbon, surely it should pass on the inside. You know, the remaining cup should become puzzle. We have another passage. It says, Asher Yuva. When do we say that the dam passes? Only if you brought it in. As if to say, and not when, and not if you took it out. Again, we have a passage. She says, fine. Let's have another question. Now that we decided that the inner is stricter than the outer, because the inner, if you bring one cup in, the second cup is disqualified. The outer, you bring one cup out, the second cup is kosher. So let's say, if you have machshava to do it outside, it passes the carbon. That's pigul. Surely, if you had machshava to spray the blood in the inner mizbeach, surely it should pass. Doesn't pass the second cup. Yet machshava peseles bechutz. Yet we had pigul. It's outside. It's possible. Is mokesh pasul down bechutz? The inner lochel is stricter because it disqualifies the other cup. Ain't it? Surely should have machshava pesel befnim. Surely pigul should be in the inside as well. So if I have a third passing. It says the passing we had before by yom hashlishi mokem. Where does it passel pigul? Only in places where there was once upon a time that 3 different things could have been brought outside. And now I'm coming to Asrit. What are the 3 things? Malkum she'em mishulish. It was the time of the bumas. In the time of the bumas, dam, you did the blood, the basa, you did the behemoth, behemudim, the fats. But you never did it on the inside of the base of Migdash. So there's no pigul inside. Where's the pigul? Only where there's a time that you're allowed to do all shlishi, all 3. But there's never a time that you're able to do all 3 in the mizbech. Because what do? You by the chat of pnim, you sprinkle the inner mizbech, but the flesh, the mudim, goes on the outer mizbech. So there's never a time that you did all 3 in the inner mizbech. There's no pigul there. Again, a pasuk. So he said, so he said, no. So now let's go the other way around. Let's say there's no pigul in the outer as well. Madach, where it's strict on the inner, there's no pigul. So surely in the outer, which is not so strict, because the remaining cup is all right. Surely there shouldn't be pigul. Let's say there's no pigul outside. In the strict place in the inner. Where it doesn't. There shouldn't be any pigul outside. Therefore, the pasuk says, Shlishi, it says in the pasuk, Shlishi, and Shlishi tells you that what? That there's a concept of pigul. Chutzlas mane pigul and chutzlas mekaymai. And chutzlas mane pigul, chutzlas mekaymai is also pigul. That's what we're telling you. So therefore, we learn from the word Shlishi that what? That whenever it is possible. Says the Gemara, Basar hayoy. Okay, now we talked about dam. Let's talk about basar. The meat of the carbon itself. Also, you're not allowed to take it out of the base of Migdash or out of Yerushalayim. If it's kachim kalam, is basar hayoytzi lechutz pasul. If you took basar from the carbon, that's supposed to be, let's say, in the chatas, and you took it outside the base of Migdash, it's pasul. And haniknus lefnim kosher. And if you brought it inside the heichel, it remains kosher. Al pi seichel should be pasul. Because let's take from dam. Which is stricter when it comes to dam? The inner mizbech. So shouldn't it be stricter also when it comes to basar? And kavchem is this. On the outside, it doesn't disqualify the second cup. Yet basar hayechel chutz pasul. He took the meat outside. It's pasul. Is mokem shepasul down shebefnim. In the inner mizbech, if you brought one cup inside, it disqualifies the second cup. So it's stricter. Is basar ad nichel befnim? Eino din sheyivso. So surely the flesh should be awesome. The pasuk had it says midama. What do you want from midama? Dama v'le basar. Only the blood, if you brought inside, it becomes possible, but not if you brought flesh. No, say bazay now. So let's say faket. Madach, where it's stricter, we say you brought the flesh inside, it's mutter. So surely, where it's not so strict on the outside, it doesn't disqualify the second cup. Surely, you brought flesh outside, it should be also mutter. Just bring it back in. The meat that you brought inside kosher is mokum shalei pasal down shebechutz shebefnim. On the outside where it doesn't disqualify any cup, but say the chutz, and it should kosher, be kosher. And we have another pasuk altogether that teaches us the din that if you took a flake of a carbon outside the pasuk where it says bos basada treifa, a field has no mechitzes, is like as if to say any meat that is needs mechitzes and you took it to a field which has no mechitzes is treifa and therefore loy seichlu. With that a kachim. We have all the psukim. Even sheyotza bas nesa. This is the whole discussion. Talmud we learned it says he didn't bring the blood el hakodesh prima. There's two parts to the Beis Hamikdash. There's the heichel. There's the I won't call down the chamber. The chamber, the main chamber. Then there's kodesh hakadoshim. So what about if you took the carbon, you brought it into kodesh hakadoshim instead of you just brought it into or you took the blood into kodesh hakadoshim? L'chayda, it says in the pasuk el hakodesh prima. Kodesh is the heichel, and prima is the innermost in the sanctum, the kodesh hakadoshim. So the question is, if kodesh is already asses the blood we're bringing in, you need to tell me that if you're bringing it into the prima, the kodesh is possible. What's going on here? Talking about a prima, prima. Well, first of all, prima means kodesh hakadoshim. Heichel menayin. How do you know even if you brought the blood into just the heichel? It's el hakodesh prima, kodesh and prima, two different rooms. Pegimara, the yom kodesh and prima. If you tell me that kodesh is also, surely prima is also. If I know that the heichel, you bring the blood in, it disqualifies the blood. Surely, if you brought it to kodesh hakadoshim, disqualifies it. So comes along Amar Rava. So Rava comes along and says, that what? That if it would only said the word prima, I would have prima means the heichel. I would have typed prima heichel. Now that it says kodesh and prima, then I know that it means that kodesh means, or the other way around. If it would say only one word, if it would say only kodesh, I would say, what is kodesh? Kodesh hakadoshim. I would think that the only time the blood gets disqualified is if you walk into kodesh hakadoshim. How do I know if you walked into the heichel ozu kodesh? By saying two words. Now I know we're talking about the kodesh. And I'll bring it out from where we had a kedushin, and that's as follows. The din is that a kohen is allowed to feed his avodim and everything else, truma. But if a guy is only a toishev, or the guy is only a sachir, he cannot. He cannot. What do you call it? He cannot eat from the truma. The Tanya Toishev, what's a Toishev? What's called Toishev and a Sacher? Sacher, somebody you hide, what's a Toishev? Zeh Konrad Kinyan Olam. That's talking about an Eved Ivri that he decided to stay longer than the 6 years. So he's a Toishev. He's there permanently. Because Ad Olam is Yevel. And Toishev is Konrad Olam. And Sacher is Konrad Kinyan Shanim. And Sacher is a Stam Eved Ivri that's for 6 years. Now, what? They cannot eat truma. You can ask a simple question. If you tell me that a nirtza cannot eat truma, then surely an eved stam cannot eat truma. For a guy for 50 years, is years mamish living there forever, yet he cannot eat truma. What do you need to say both? Yema teishav al yema sachir. And you have to say, surely. So the modern Navas, Ilu Kain, if I would only say one of them, I don't care which one, I would say, Toishiv, I would say, type 6 years is a long time also. Right, they don't have contracts longer than 3 years. Some say the Paskins or Rabbonim shouldn't have contracts longer than 3 years because then you become an Eved. But if it's a Konu, a Kinyan Olam, he says what you should do is that you have to sign. I have 3-year contracts with options to renew it. But as far as the shul is concerned, it's Leil Avot.
So they'll not.
Of course they don't know because they say it has to be worked both ways. For the very reason that we don't be stuck. Aval Konu Kinyan Olam, but that's what he says we should do. Aval Konu Kinyan Olam, yeah, that's what I would have thought. So just like over there, we need the 2 words. One of them is taka extra, but we need it in order for us to interpret it correctly. Is the same thing over here? So the same thing over here. Abai says, what are you comparing the case of Eved to our case of Beis Hamikdash? Why? Today, 2 separate people, 2 individuals. There's a Taish and there's a Sachir. So if it would have said only one, I would have taken it for obviously the lesser Kiddush. I need both. The Torah could have gotten out of the whole problem. Just say the word Nirtza. Don't say Toisha. Don't use ambiguous words. Say Toisha. Say Nirtza. Then we know Nirtza is 50 years. Then surely an Eved cannot eat Truma. No, that's not a problem. Why? The Idach Osi b'Kavachayim because we have the rule Milsa the Asi b'Kavachayim Tod b'Kasha Lakra. You bring a pasuk down. Very interesting. I'm just looking at the side of the Shas. It brings the Gemara. Tachim, it's actually in Kedushin on this very sugya. These words, Milsid also Kavachem, oh, Sharad, it's that same place. Hey, in the same area. Anyway, so we're going to look at Elahach over here. Even the Ifsel Behechel over here, because you cannot get into the Kodesh HaKadoshim without going through the Hechel first. So therefore, the question is, let it just say Hechel, and then there's nothing to tell me about it disqualifies the Kodesh HaKadoshim. You can't get to it. No, but before you even got to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it already became possible the blood because you brought it into the Hechel. El Hacha, Kim Nifel, Behechel, Lefnai Lefim, my boy, why talk about Prima? Elam, but Abaye said, Loi Nitzacha Ela Laderech Meshupish. There's a way of getting into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, circumnavigating the Hechel. So what happens? You enter Kodesh HaKadoshim not through the Hechel, but you went through, as Rashi says, through the roofs or whatever it is, through other places.
Shupash means the Russian peace space, like a little doorway.
Yeah, exactly. He actually supposed through the roof, through the upstairs. You went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. You went, like, the maintenance people to come down to the skylights. So what happens then? Maybe it wouldn't be us. So we need to tell you both. Taste doesn't like the pshat, but anyway, that's what Parashat Pshat is. Omle Rava says, well, Haboksi Beit says in the pasuk clearly that you should not Yuva, which means the normal way, not climbing through roofs. It means the normal way. And L'chayda, your question is a good question. How do you get to the Kodesh HaKadoshim without going through the Kodesh first? Ella Amar Rava, says Rava. Kol midi, the chashiv Allah, this is a big chiddush. Kol midi, the chashiv Allah, lefnai lefnim, le'mifsa behechel. If your intention was, remember the Mishnah learned one opinion, if your intention was to bring the blood into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, then if you brought it to the hechel, your taka wouldn't be over. Because it has to be intention. And that was intention. And therefore you need a separate Isa for both. One for the Kodesh and one for Kodesh HaKadoshim. Boy, Rav has a question. Okay, what about Pad Helim Dover Shel Tzibur? Let's say a Pad Helim Dover Shel Tzibur where it's supposed to be in the inside, and they belong in the Hechel. But then you brought the blood into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. No, is the Isser of Kodesh HaKadoshim only if it's also the Hechel, then it's also HaKadoshim, because it says Kodesh Prima. So there has to be an Isser Kodesh, then there's an Isser Prima. What about there's no Isser Kodesh, because that's where it belongs? And all you did was you brought it into Kodesh HaKadoshim. Is there still Isser there? Are they two linked or not? Mao, me, I mean, you say La Kodesh Prima, Kol Hecha, they get La Kodesh, but then Isser Kodesh, Prima. Kol Hecha, La Kodesh, La Prima. It's not Prima. I deal with perhaps or it's different. The point is, this taka belongs in the Heichel, but doesn't belong to Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Im Tim Shalem, if you're going to argue, Shalom Mekaimenu, it's the wrong place, and therefore you're over. What about Par V'Soyer Sheyem Kippurim? It's interesting. The Par and the Godi and Kippur, you're supposed to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and sprinkle the blood in front of the Ben Abadim, in front of the Arim. So what happened was Shehiza Middamin Abadim. You went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim where it belongs, and then you go into the Heichel and the Kodesh, and then you do the rest of the activities. You finished whatever you were doing in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you went back out, and then you brought it back in again. How do we view that? Mao. Me, I mean, we say Mekayman who it belongs to Kodesh HaKadoshim, even though you already did it, so therefore it's not really Chutz Mekayman, because once you complete the job, it doesn't belong there anymore. So it's considered Chutz Mekayman. And if you're going to argue that once you went out of the job, because the Torah used the word, if you went out, okay, because and because you went out of the room, that's it. It's over. What about he's in middaman ala paroiches v'hitzilim mizbech? Okay, what happens? Okay, you back in the kodesh in the heichel. You sprinkle the blood on the paroiches. Nice was to sprinkle on the mizbech. And the Torah uses the word v'yotze. You should go away from the paroiches and go to the mizbech. You use the word v'yotze as if you're going, even though there's no wall between the mizbech and the paroiches, but because the Torah uses the word and you go out, the Torah in theory considers it like a different room. Even though it doesn't, there's no mechitza there, and that's the question. Mao, and then then he brought it back right where the prices was. So he went back the other way. There's no wall, there's no mechitza there. It's one room. Or do we say it's called yitzia? The Torah said the yitzia. You went out. Now you're going back in. It's a problem. Teiku. And all these questions, Teiku. On that note, we'll stop over here. We'll learn tomorrow night.